Snow falls in heavy sheets across the pine forests of the Ardennes. The sky is a dim gray curtain, muffling sound and light alike. A narrow, rutted road cuts through the woods, half frozen, half mud, the kind of terrain no sane driver would attempt in wartime. Yet through that impossible mess, a tiny vehicle bounces and roars as if it owns the earth beneath it. The Willys MB Jeep, barely higher than a man's waist, its windshield folded down, tires caked with ice darts around shell holes and burnt trucks. Two soldiers ride inside, their faces raw from wind and exhaustion. At the wheel is Corporal Sam Harkins, 101st Airborne Division. Beside him, Sergeant Joe Martelli clutches a Thompson submachine gun, eyes scanning the tree line for movement. Behind them, the woods crackle with gunfire. German units, part of Kampfgruppe Piper, have ambushed an Allied convoy. Harkins' Jeep carries orders for the surrounded paratroopers at Bastogne. If they don't get through, hundreds of men could die. A mortar explodes nearby, showering snow and bark across the hood. The Jeep slides, fishtails, straightens again. The little four-cylinder Go Devil engine screams in protest but never quits. Mud, ice, debris, it conquers everything. "Keep her steady," Sam Martelli shouts. "I ain't got steady left," Harkins yells back, grinning through his teeth. They crest a hill and drop into a valley where a destroyed Sherman tank lies half buried in snow. The Jeep darts around it like a fox avoiding a bear. Behind them, tracer rounds streak red through the air. "Those Krauts think we're nuts," Martelli mutters. Harkins laughs. They're not wrong. Moments later, they burst out of the tree line and onto a frozen field where an American roadblock waves them through. The men cheer as the Jeep slides to a stop, engine steaming. One sergeant points and shakes his head. "Damn thing looks like a toy," he says. "But it just came out of hell." Harkins and Martelli climb out, legs trembling, hands shaking from adrenaline. The officer at the post steps forward. "You made it through Piper's line." Harkins hands him the envelope. "Orders for Bastogne, sir. Compliments of the Go Devil." The officer whistles low. "You boys just bought us a Christmas." To the Germans watching from the woods that day, the scene is baffling. They've seen half-tracks bog down, trucks stall, even tanks sink into mud. But these absurd little American toy cars, open unarmored, half the size of a Kubelwagen, seem unstoppable. Captured reports later describe them in disbelief. One Wehrmacht lieutenant writes, "The Americans have a strange small vehicle. It goes everywhere through snow rivers, forests, as if the laws of nature do not apply." Our men call it Das Wunderauto, the miracle car. What they witnessed that winter was not luck. It was the result of an industrial miracle, a machine born of necessity. Behind that one Jeep, bouncing through the snow toward Bastogne, stood an army of them, over 600,000 Willys MB and Ford GPW vehicles, built in America, shipped to every front, destined to become the beating heart of Allied mobility. They were not glamorous. They were not armored. But they could go anywhere, do anything, and never quit. A soldier's best friend and an engineer's quiet masterpiece. And before the war was over, even the enemy would learn to respect and envy the toy Jeep. July 11th, 1940, Washington, D.C. The summer heat presses down like a hand on the Capitol. Inside the offices of the U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps, ceiling fans turn lazily over a table buried in blueprints. Colonel William F. Lee, head of procurement, wipes his forehead. He looks across the table at a group of civilian engineers. "Gentlemen," Lee says, "the Army needs a light reconnaissance vehicle, fast, tough, and simple. 4-wheel drive. Room for 3 men and a machine gun. And we need it in 49 days. The engineers exchange glances. One of them, Delmar Barney Roos of Willys Overland, leans forward. "Colonel, you want a miracle?" Lee nods. "Exactly." The order sounds impossible, but it's born from panic. Across the Atlantic, France has fallen. Britain stands alone. The German blitzkrieg has shocked the world. America, still neutral, realizes it needs mobility fast. The specifications read like madness: weight under 300 pounds, payload 660, 4-wheel drive, fold-down windshield, 40 miles per hour, must climb 30-degree slopes and ford 2-foot streams, and most insane of all, deliver the first prototype in 49 days, Only 3 companies dare to try. Bantam Car Company in Pennsylvania, Willys Overland in Ohio, Ford Motor Company in Michigan. In Butler, engineer Carl Probst accepts first. He sketches designs on envelopes and cigarette packs. 49 days later, the Bantam prototype rolls onto the test field exactly on deadline. The little machine races over rough ground like a wild animal. It fords creeks, climbs slopes, and plows through mud. One general laughs, "By God, it's perfect." But Bantam is too small to mass produce it. The Army sends the design to Willys and Ford for evaluation. In truth, to copy, improve, and build it by the thousands. At Willys Overland, Barney Roos studies the plans and improves them. He installs the 60-horsepower Go Devil engine. He strengthens the frame, adjusts gear ratios for torque, and builds the prototype, the Willys Quad. At Camp Holabird, Maryland, Captain Eugene Vidal takes the wheel. Feels like a mule with an engine, he laughs. The Army tests it through mud-gravel rivers and simulated combat. The Willys Quad emerges battered but unbroken. After a week, the verdict is unanimous. This is the one. The Army orders 16,000 immediately, the Willys MB. Ford joins production under license building the GPWG for Government W for Willys design. By 1942, both companies are building thousands steel mules rolling from Toledo and Dearborn. Each costs just $738, cheap, rugged, beloved by soldiers. Mechanics love them. Commanders demand them. When the first Jeeps reach Britain, officers are stunned. "It's a bulldog on wheels," one colonel writes. The Germans are less amused. Their Kubelwagen is reliable but fragile. The Jeep is crude but unstoppable. A 1942 report admits the American small car is inferior in appearance but superior in performance. It runs where no vehicle should run. By the time America enters the war, the Jeep is already a soldier. It carries generals, medics, snipers, and hope. It tows artillery, hauls the wounded, and even flies under parachutes into battle. General George C. Marshall calls it America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. But in the summer of 1940, it's just a crude prototype, the start of a legend. The little car that could. The miracle machine that did. November 1942, North Africa. The sun beats down like a hammer. The desert wind scours the sand into sheets of gold dust that sting the skin and fill every crease of machinery. Convoy columns crawl across the endless dunes, tanks, trucks, half-tracks, but out in front, darting between them like desert foxes, run the small shapes of Jeeps. Corporal Eddie Tex Malone of the U.S. 1st Armored Division grips the wheel of his Willys MB with one hand and wipes the sweat from his eyes with the other. The air smells of fuel, leather, and dust. His goggles are opaque with grime. "Feels like we're driving on God's skillet," he mutters. His passenger, Lieutenant Jack Devereaux, smiles behind his scarf. Better than walking Tex. The Jeep bounces over a ridge, lands hard, and keeps going. No suspension failure, no hesitation, just that steady whine of the little 4-cylinder engine pushing through heat that would kill a man in an hour. Behind them stretches the Allied invasion force of Operation Torch, spreading like an iron tide along the Moroccan and Algerian coasts. Their mission to open a second front against the Axis in North Africa. But the terrain is a killer: sand dunes, dry wadis, rocky outcroppings, a graveyard for conventional vehicles. Only the Jeep thrives here. By day it carries messengers and ammunition between the scattered columns. By night, it becomes a scout car creeping across the sand with its engine throttled low. The British long-range desert group veterans of desert warfare quickly adopt it, stripping off windshields, adding extra fuel cans and machine guns. To them, it's more than transport. It's a survival tool. One LRDG officer writes in his logbook, "The Jeep moves like a goat, drinks little, and climbs anything. In the desert, it is as valuable as water." Even General Dwight D. Eisenhower, overseeing the campaign, notices the little machines buzzing around his headquarters like bees. He leans against one coffee mug in hand and remarks to a staff officer, "The Jeep is our most versatile weapon. It does everything except win the war by itself." The enemy notices too. German observers watch in disbelief as these toy-sized vehicles streak across ground that bogs down panzer divisions. A Wehrmacht officer captured near Kasserine Pass tells his interrogators, "We call them Wunderautos. They fly over the earth. Even our motorcycles cannot follow." Indeed, the Jeep's agility becomes its deadliest weapon. Its short wheelbase and low weight let it skim over sand where trucks sink to their axles. Crews learn to deflate their tires slightly for traction and keep a shovel strapped to the side for digging out when buried, though, more often than not, the Jeep powers itself free with a cough and a lurch. When the Battle of Kasserine Pass erupts in February 1943, Jeep convoys shuttle ammunition and wounded soldiers through artillery fire. They weave between columns of retreating infantry engines, howling, sometimes towing 37mm anti-tank guns or trailers loaded with rations. Private Ray Connors, riding shotgun during one such run, later recalls, "I could feel the heat of shells bursting around us. But that little Jeep, she never flinched. We called her Mary by then. She got us out every time." The Jeep becomes the connective tissue of the Allied army, a messenger, a workhorse, a lifeline. From Casablanca to Tunis, it serves as ambulance, radio car, reconnaissance scout, and command post. Generals Montgomery and Patton both ride them into forward positions, their staff officers clinging to the rails as the wind tears at their uniforms. Photographs show Patton standing in his Jeep, pearl-handled revolvers gleaming, barking orders as the vehicle bounces through clouds of dust. To his men, it becomes a symbol not of luxury, but of relentless motion. But the Jeep's first true test of faith comes during the Tunisian winter rains. The same sands that baked under the sun turn to swamps overnight. British Bedfords and American GMC trucks bog down by the dozens. The convoys grind to a halt. Supplies pile up miles behind the front. Only the Jeeps keep moving. Their small tires slice through the muck, their lightweight frames bouncing free, where heavier vehicles sink. Drivers chain two Jeeps together with a cable to pull larger trucks, free engines groaning but refusing to quit. One driver, knee-deep in mud, laughs as he guns the throttle. "You can drown me, but not this little bastard." By the spring of 1943, when Axis resistance in Tunisia collapses, the Jeep is everywhere, on every road, every ridge, every battlefield. It's no longer just a vehicle. It's part of the Allied identity. A British war correspondent writes, "The Jeep is not merely a machine. It is a companion, loyal, uncomplaining, indestructible. It follows the soldier like his shadow." When the dust finally settles and German prisoners march past rows of Allied vehicles, one Wehrmacht sergeant stops to stare at a Jeep caked in mud, its windshield cracked, its tires worn to the threads. He nudges a comrade and mutters in disbelief, "They crossed the Sahara with that." His comrade nods, "And soon they'll cross Europe." He's right. The Jeep's next battle will not be fought in the heat, but in the cold, from the olive groves of Sicily to the hedgerows of Normandy, where its reputation as Das Wunderauto will become unshakable. July 10th, 1943. Coast of Sicily. The night sky burns with tracer fire. Allied landing craft grind against the rocky beaches near Gela and Licata as the invasion of Sicily begins. Waves crash against steel hulls while machine gun fire rattles from the cliffs above. Men shout, engines roar, and in the chaos of it all, a strange sound rises, the high, uneven growl of dozens of small engines hitting the shore. The Jeeps have landed. They come off the LST ramps like unleashed dogs, their tires splashing through saltwater exhaust pipes, sputtering steam. Each is wrapped in canvas against the spray, loaded with ammunition, fuel cans, and men. As soon as their wheels hit sand, they leap forward up the beach through shell craters weaving between the bodies and debris. Captain Harold Hank Bronson, 3rd Infantry Division, rides in the lead vehicle, crouched low over the windshield. "Go, go, go," he shouts to his driver, Private First Class Tony Rizzo, who guns the throttle. The Jeep roars up the incline, dodging wreckage, its headlights dark. A shell explodes nearby, showering them with gravel and hot air. "Still runs," Rizzo yells. Bronson grins. "Of course she does. She's American." Behind them, a dozen more jeeps swarm up the slope, towing small artillery pieces, radio trailers, even stretchers of wounded men. Their silhouettes dart through the muzzle flashes like spirits of iron. To the Germans defending the cliffs, the sight is bewildering, a swarm of fast, unarmored vehicles zigzagging through fire as if immune to it. One officer in the Hermann Göring division writes later in his diary, "They came ashore in toys, open cars, barely larger than motorcycles, yet they were everywhere at once. Our machine guns could not stop them." As the beachhead stabilizes, the jeeps spread inland. The narrow Sicilian roads, little more than goat paths winding through olive groves, are tailor-made for their agility. Where half-tracks and trucks grind their gears or collapse bridges, the jeeps dart past. In one village near Niskemi, a squad of American engineers find themselves blocked by rubble and an ambushed column. A single jeep armed with a .30 caliber Browning machine gun takes a side path through a vineyard, flanks the German position, and opens fire. The enemy panics, convinced they're under attack by a larger force. Within minutes, the Americans clear the road. The after-action report notes dryly, "Enemy surrendered to one jeep and 2 angry men." The terrain in Sicily is brutal. Dust chokes engines, heat warps tires, and the roads vanish into the mountains. Yet the jeeps adapt. Mechanics rig jerry cans as auxiliary fuel tanks. Infantrymen lash spare tires and weapons to the hood. Some units fit stretchers over the fenders, turning them into impromptu ambulances. Private James Rutledge, a medic, later recalls, "We'd load the wounded on the hood knees, tied down, and drive slow as we could. The jeep didn't care if it was a road or a ditch, it just kept going. We lost men sometimes, but never a jeep." Even the mule drivers, the traditional backbone of Mediterranean logistics, start calling the little vehicles iron goats. The name sticks. By August, when Axis forces begin their withdrawal from Sicily, the jeep is part of the landscape, climbing slopes, towing anti-aircraft guns, even carrying generals to the front lines. General George S. Patton, commanding the U.S. 7th Army, becomes inseparable from his. He has it fitted with radio gear and twin flags, the stars and stripes on one fender, his command standard on the other. Reporters photograph him standing upright in the back, binoculars in hand, as his jeep bounces along mountain roads. The image becomes iconic, the American general mobile, fearless, in a vehicle that mirrors his own personality, blunt, fast, and unstoppable. When asked later what made the Sicily campaign possible, Patton answers without hesitation, "My men, my tanks, and my jeeps." The Germans are less amused. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring orders his staff to study the Allied light vehicle phenomenon. His report is concise. The small American car jeep is of extraordinary mobility and tactical usefulness. No equivalent exists in the Wehrmacht. He urges production of a similar model, but it's already too late. The German industry, stretched thin by bombing and shortages, cannot replicate the simplicity and scale of the Willys. After Sicily falls, the Allies prepare for the next leap across the Strait of Messina onto the Italian mainland. The jeep fleet, battered and dust-caked, lines the docks. Many are patched with tin and wire, but all are running. Mechanics joke that jeeps never die, they just change shape. Private Rizzo, cleaning his windshield one evening, watches the sun set over the water and says, "You think she can climb Italy too?" Captain Bronson smirks. "Kid, this thing could climb the moon if you gave it gas." As dawn breaks the next day, the jeeps roll onto landing craft once more, engines rumbling, flags fluttering, headlights off. Ahead lies the mountains of Calabria, and beyond that Rome. The toy cars have proven themselves in desert and dust. Now they'll face the mud, rain, and rubble of Europe itself, and the legend of the Willys Jeep will only grow stronger. September 1943. Salerno, Italy. Rain turns the coast into a swamp. The air reeks of salt fuel and smoke. Allied troops, soaked to the bone, trudge through knee-deep mud while German artillery thunders from the hills above. Landing craft. jam the beaches, their cargo struggling to move inland. Tanks stall, trucks sink, and roads disappear under torrents of water and shattered rock. But one machine keeps moving. The Willys MB Jeep canvas roof, flapping fenders caked with mud, windshield down, climbs the slippery mountain roads like a living creature. Its four-wheel drive digs into the muck where everything else dies. Corporal Tony Rizzo is back behind the wheel, the same man who once raced across Sicily's vineyards. Now he's hauling crates of mortar rounds to an outpost near Battipaglia. His passenger sergeant, Joe Alvarez, braces himself against the dashboard as the Jeep bucks and slides. Feels like driving a bathtub full of dynamite, Alvarez shouts over the noise. Rizzo grins. Then pray we don't hit a pothole. The road narrows into a goat path that clings to the hillside. To their left, a 100-foot drop. To their right, shattered olive trees and smoking rubble. Every curve could be an ambush. But the Jeep just keeps crawling forward, low gear, steady, throttle the engine's metallic heartbeat echoing through the rain. Higher up the slope, a group of British sappers wave them through. Bloody things run on miracles, don't they, one says, slapping the hood as they pass. Rizzo just nods. By dawn, the Jeep reaches the forward battery position. The gunners cheer as Rizzo's load arrives ammunition dry despite the storm. Within minutes, the guns are firing again, hammering the German lines above Salerno. Captain Harold Bronson, their commanding officer, watches through binoculars. That little car just won us another hour, he mutters. Across Italy, the story repeats itself. The campaign through the Apennines is one of mud rain and mountain passes. The Germans call their retreating lines the Gustav Line, and later the Gothic Line, walls of stone and snow meant to stop the Allies' cold. But between every ridge and valley, the Jeeps keep running. They haul artillery shells to gun emplacements at Monte Cassino Ferry, the wounded back down the slopes, and carry commanders through bombardments where no truck dares go. Their tires bite into wet rock. Their axles groan but hold. A war correspondent for Stars and Stripes writes, "In Italy, the Jeep is not a vehicle. It's a mountain goat with an American flag." In December 1943, at the height of the Cassino battles, engineers modified Jeeps for the steepest terrain yet. They fit chains on tires, cut away fenders, even mount winches to haul other Jeeps up cliffs. In some divisions, soldiers use them as mobile command posts, bolting radios and maps directly to the dash. In one remarkable instance near San Pietro, a Jeep becomes a rolling ambulance. Two medics strap stretchers to its sides with rope and drive straight into enemy fire to recover wounded men. Both are hit. The Jeep returns alone, engine still idling, blood streaked across its fenders. When word reaches headquarters, a major shakes his head and says, "If that doesn't earn her a medal, nothing will." The Jeep's versatility astonishes even its designers back in Toledo. Engineers receive field reports describing Jeeps serving as mobile command cars for generals and artillery spotters. Field ambulances carrying 2 stretcher cases at a time. Tow tractors for light aircraft on makeshift airstrips. Signal trucks with radios and antennas bolted to the frame. Weapons carriers mounting 30 and 50 caliber Brownings. Reconnaissance scouts, often the first vehicles into enemy towns. There's even a photo from the Anzio beachhead of a Jeep driving through surf water, up to its headlights, towing a barge line. The caption reads simply, "Still running." German soldiers who capture one are immediately impressed. A paratrooper from the Fallschirmjäger Regiment 3, interrogated after the Battle of Monte Cassino, admits, "We tried to use your Jeep once. It climbed better than our trucks. We were jealous." In response, German engineers attempt to copy the concept. The result, the Volkswagen Type 82 Kübelwagen, is reliable but lacks four-wheel drive. It performs well on roads, but fails in mountains and mud. The Allies joke that it's a fine car for Paris in springtime. Meanwhile, the Jeep keeps conquering everything else. By the time Rome falls in June 1944, every Allied unit in Italy runs on the same heartbeat, the whine of the Willys engine. Convoys of jeeps pour through the city gates, olive-drab paint flecked with dust and grime, stars and stripes fluttering from antennae. Civilians cheer and toss flowers. Children climb onto the hoods laughing as soldiers hand out chocolate and gum. Rizzo parks under a stone archway and shuts off his engine for the first time in days. The sudden silence feels unreal. "Think she's tired?" Alvarez asks. Rizzo pats the steering wheel. "She's earned a nap. But don't bet on it lasting long. Because far to the north across the English Channel, another invasion is brewing, one larger, deadlier, and colder than any before. And when the first Allied boots touch the beaches of France, the Jeep will be right there again, leading the charge into occupied Europe." June 6, 1944. Normandy coast, France. The world is gray and trembling with the sound of war. Before sunrise, the sea heaves under the weight of thousands of vessels, landing craft destroyers, transports all churning toward the beaches under fire. The air smells of salt, cordite, and fear. Inside one of those landing craft, a Willys MB Jeep crouches between rows of men from the 1st Infantry Division. Its olive-drab hood glistens with sea spray. The driver, Sergeant Bill Rader, grips the wheel jaw set tight. Beside him, Lieutenant Frank Carlin checks his watch and mutters, 3 minutes. The ramp lowers. Gunfire erupts. Waves crash in, turning the deck into chaos. "Let's move," Carlin shouts. Rader slams the clutch, and the Jeep lurches forward into the surf. The engine sputters, once coughs, then roars alive. The little vehicle claws through waist-deep water tires, spinning against sand and shell craters. Bullets hiss like hornets. Men fall around them. Rader keeps driving. The Jeep surges up the beach, dodging wrecked obstacles and burning trucks, its exhaust spitting steam. Carlin, shouting over the noise, points ahead. "Up there, radio team needs support." Rader nods. "Hang on." They bounce through a gap in the seawall, the suspension groaning, and burst onto the bluff above Omaha Beach. Behind them, the sea burns red and white with tracer fire. Ahead, a chaos of cliffs, smoke, and courage. By mid-morning, the first Jeeps are ashore in all 5 invasion zones. Utah, Omaha Gold, Juno, and Sword. They arrive half-submerged, dragged by bulldozers pushed off landing craft, or driven through water deeper than the headlights. Some are waterproofed with makeshift seals of grease and canvas. Others simply rely on luck. And yet, miraculously, they run. Each one brings life to the front: ammunition, radios, stretchers, and medics. Engineers use them to haul demolition charges. Signal units bolt field antennas to their frames. Chaplains hold masses on their hoods. One soldier later recalls, "We hit the beach with rifles and jeeps. One carried our guns, the other carried our hope." As the beachheads expand, the jeeps prove their worth hour by hour. They shuttle wounded men back to aid posts, ferry messages when radios fail, and tow anti-tank guns through the muddy bocage. Their small size lets them slip through hedgerows where trucks can't pass. In one daring episode near Vierville-sur-Mer, a Jeep loaded with dynamite races straight into a German machine gun nest. The driver leaps out seconds before detonation, and the explosion clears the position. The men in the nearby foxhole shout after him, "You crazy son of a gun!" He just grins, brushing dirt off his uniform. Blame the Jeep, she did the driving. Further inland, the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions begin recovering their scattered units. Many paratroopers find crates marked Willys MB Airborne Variant. These special models have folding windshields, quick-release steering columns, and detachable bumpers. They're designed to fit into the belly of a Douglas C-47 Skytrain or be dropped by parachute. Paratrooper Lieutenant Jack Riley remembers seeing one drift down under silk canopies near Sainte-Mère-Église. It hit the ground hard, bent the axle, but 5 minutes later we had it running. Drove right through a minefield, too. Damn thing's made of luck. As Allied divisions push inland toward Carentan and St. Lo, the Jeep becomes the lifeline of the advance. Fuel, food, ammunition, all of it rides on their backs. They race through shellfire, fording rivers, weaving between hedgerows at 30 miles per hour. Reporters embedded with the troops marvel at the sight. One writes for the Times, "The American Army moves not on its stomach, but on its jeeps." Another from Life magazine captures a photo that will become iconic, a jeep hauling a cart of wounded soldiers through a village reduced to rubble, its driver still smiling despite the smoke. The caption reads, "The little car that could." The Germans, for their part, don't know what to make of it. Intelligence briefings refer to the Willys MB as a lightweight, multi-purpose car of great climbing ability, but the men in the field call it Teufelswagen, the devil's car. Captured Wehrmacht driver Hans Miller describes his first encounter. They appeared everywhere on roads, in fields, even in the woods. Fast as motorcycles, but carrying whole squads. You'd hit one and another would appear. We began to think they multiplied overnight. Even the elite Panzer Lehr division learns to fear them. Small reconnaissance units of jeeps armed with 50 caliber Brownings strike supply columns, then vanish into the hedgerows before tanks can turn their turrets. The Germans, used to fighting heavy armor, suddenly face a swarm of agile, tireless insects that never stop biting. By July, the breakout from Normandy begins. Columns of jeeps lead the charge, guiding tanks through mined roads. Engineers mark safe paths with white tape hung from their fenders, headlights off engines whispering through the dark. One jeep belonging to the 2nd Armored Division drives 27 straight hours without stopping, delivering orders between scattered units. The driver, half asleep, keeps going with a cigarette clenched between his teeth and one hand on the wheel. When he finally stops, the officer in charge asks how he's still awake. He shrugs. "She won't quit, so neither will I." By the time the Allies reach St. Lo, the Jeep has become more than transport, its identity. Soldiers name them, paint slogans on their hoods, and trade spare parts like good luck charms. Old Faithful Daisy May, Lil Bastard Rebel Freedom Wagon, each name tells a story. When General Omar Bradley tours the front lines, he insists on driving his own Jeep. "If it's good enough for my boys," he says, "it's good enough for me." And somewhere behind him, on a muddy French road, another convoy of Jeeps stretches to the horizon, hundreds of them, engines humming in unison, like the pulse of an advancing army. The miracle car has crossed the Channel. Now it will cross a continent. August 1944. Northern France. Dust clouds rise over the wheat fields as endless convoys roll east. The summer sun burns low on the horizon, turning every metal surface to fire. The engines drone without pause, trucks, half-tracks, tanks, but always out in front, the smallest of them all, the Jeep. At the wheel of one Willys MB Sergeant Bill Rader squints into the glare. His goggles are streaked with mud, his hands raw from weeks of driving. In the passenger seat, Lieutenant Frank Carlin unfolds a map that flaps wildly in the wind. "Chart says the bridge at Dreux is still intact," he yells. Rader nods, grinning. "If it's not, we'll just build a new one out of Jeeps." Behind them stretches a column from General Patton's 3rd Army, advancing faster than supply lines can keep up. Fuel drums rattle in trailers. Infantry ride on fenders. Machine guns point skyward against Luftwaffe strafers. The road is chaos, and yet somehow the Jeeps keep the rhythm of war moving forward. 2 weeks after the breakout from Normandy, the Allied drive becomes a race. Patton's forces sweep east and south, chasing retreating German divisions across the Loire Valley. Their secret weapon isn't a new tank or aircraft. It's the sheer mobility that the Jeep gives them. Each division maintains hundreds of Jeeps, forming a web of messengers, supply haulers, and reconnaissance scouts that outrun German expectations. Radios mounted on dashboards allow real-time coordination between armored units and infantry. Orders that once took hours now arrive in minutes. Captain Henry Fowler, a staff officer with the 4th Armored Division, notes in his diary, "Our entire command moves on wheels the size of a kitchen stool. It's absurd and magnificent all at once. In the villages, they pass French civilians pour into the streets, cheering and waving flags. Children run alongside the convoys shouting, 'Vive l'Amérique!' Soldiers toss them chocolate and gum from the jeeps. Some drivers mount little flags on their windshields. Others scrawl chalk slogans like, 'To Berlin' or 'Bust.' When a jeep stops in one liberated town, an old man places a hand on its hood and says softly, 'We thought only tanks could save us. But you came first.' Raider smiles and replies, 'We don't wait for tanks, sir.' At headquarters, the jeep becomes the mobile office of the modern army. Maps are spread across hoods. Generals hold briefings while sitting on fenders. Dispatch riders speed between divisions, sometimes driving for days with only coffee and adrenaline to keep them awake. A British war correspondent remarks in his notebook, "The jeep is the horse of the mechanized age, tireless, loyal, slightly mad, and indispensable. But the road to Paris is no victory parade. German resistance hardens around Chartres and Orléans. Roads are cratered bridges mined and artillery ambushes lurk in the woods. The weather turns rain mixing with smoke to form a choking haze. Mud returns, and with it the old enemy attrition. In one night march, a column of jeeps hauls fuel cans through a downpour so heavy it drowns the headlights. Drivers tie flashlights to the rear bumpers of the vehicles ahead just to see the path. Engines slip and sputter, but they keep going. When one jeep slides into a ditch, Raider's crew stops to help. 3 men push while the driver revs the motor. The little machine pops out like a cork from a bottle, tires spinning mud into the air. The men cheer, soaked but laughing. C. Raider shouts over the rain, "You can't kill her." On August 25, 1944, the convoy crests a ridge and sees the spires of Paris rising through the haze. The city has been liberated. Bells ring. Crowds flood the streets waving tricolor flags and throwing flowers. Jeeps pour in behind the lead French armored units, thousands of them, horns blaring, engines roaring like an orchestra of freedom. Soldiers stand on the back seats waving flags. Civilians climb onto hoods weeping and cheering. In the chaos, a French resistance fighter slaps the side of Raider's jeep. "You Americans, you bring liberty on 4 wheels, he shouts. Raider laughs. Guess that's why they call her the Liberty Car. The scene becomes one of the most iconic images of the war, jeeps crawling through the boulevards of Paris, draped in flags and flowers, generals saluting from their seats. Behind them, the heavier vehicles crawl in. Days later, tanks, supply trucks, artillery. But it's the jeep that gets remembered. A correspondent from Collier's Weekly writes that week they drove into Paris like cowboys into a frontier town, fearless, dirty, grinning, and riding the smallest chariot ever built. For the Germans, the sight is demoralizing. Prisoners captured along the retreat are shown newsreels of the liberation. One panzer lieutenant scoffs bitterly. "It's not fair they beat us with toy cars." His comrade replies quietly, "No. They beat us with the men who drive them." By early September, the Allied spearheads have crossed the Seine and are heading toward Belgium. The jeep columns are moving faster than supply trains can follow. Mechanics strip captured German vehicles for spare fuel. Soldiers carry extra jerry cans lashed to the fenders. The jeep's engine, simple, loud, and endlessly stubborn, becomes the heartbeat of the liberation. Raider and Carlin still together after months of war park under a grove one night, eating cold rations beside their mud-caked vehicle. "She's ugly as sin," Carlin says, patting the hood. "Yeah," Raider answers, smiling. "But she gets us everywhere. And soon everywhere will mean something far greater than Paris." Ahead lies the dark forest of the Ardennes once more, and the coldest winter Europe has ever seen. December 19th, 1944. Near Bastogne, Belgium. The forest is white and silent except for the distant rumble of artillery. Snow falls so thick it muffles the world, blanketing wrecked tanks and frozen corpses alike. The temperature has dropped to 15 below zero. Engines freeze. Fuel gels in the lines. Men fight frostbite as fiercely as they fight the enemy. And through it all, the little Willys MB Jeep keeps moving. Corporal Sam Harkins hunches over his steering wheel, wrapped in 2 layers of blankets. His Jeep, nicknamed Old Lizzie, lurches forward along a narrow trail half buried in snow. In the back are crates of morphine bandages and ammunition bound for the 101st Airborne, trapped inside Bastogne. Beside him rides Sergeant Joe Martelli, teeth-chattering rifle across his knees. "You sure she can make it?" he asks. Harkins grins through the frost forming on his scarf. "She got us through Piper's boys once. She'll do it again." The wind howls, snow lashes the windshield. The engine coughs and sputters but never stops. Harkins downshifts, guiding the Jeep over frozen ruts. Chains rattle on the tires. Somewhere in the woods, a German MG-42 chatters its sound, cutting through the storm like tearing paper. Martelli ducks instinctively. That was close. "Too far north to hit us," Harkins replies. "Keep your head down anyway." They push on mile after mile of frozen forest and white hell. The Jeep's canvas seats are stiff with ice. Every bump sends a shudder through the men's bones. The Battle of the Bulge has turned the Ardennes into a nightmare. German panzers thrust westward, splitting the Allied line. Roads vanish under snowdrifts. Trucks and half-tracks bog down or refuse to start. The front lines blur in confusion. But the Jeeps, lighter, smaller, and more stubborn, become the only vehicles capable of moving supplies and messages. Lieutenant Thomas Delaney, 502nd Parachute Infantry, writes in his diary, "Our Jeeps were angels. They brought food, ammo, and mail when nothing else could move. We'd have frozen solid without them." At one forward post, a medic Jeep rolls in under fire carrying 3 wounded men. The driver, barely 19, leaps out, his face black with exhaust. "They said it couldn't be done," he gasps, "so I did it anyway." Then he collapses in the snow. In Bastogne itself, Jeeps run non-stop through bombed streets, hauling stretchers to the church-turned-hospital. Their engines echo against the stone walls, a constant rhythmic reminder that help still reaches them from the outside world. One is fitted with skis on the front wheels and chains on the rear, transforming it into a makeshift snowmobile. Locals stare in disbelief as it slides past horse-drawn carts. Americans, one Belgian farmer mutters half in awe. They'll drive anything, anywhere. At a crossroads, south of Hoffelais, Harkins's Jeep finally meets its greatest test. The road ahead is blocked by the frozen wreck of a German Panther tank, its gun pointing uselessly into the woods. The only way around is a steep embankment down to a frozen creek bed. Martelli leans out. "We can't make that." Harkins just smiles, throws the gear into low range, and says, "Watch me." The Jeep crawls down the slope, tires crunching through snow, ice groaning beneath them. Halfway across, the left wheel breaks through the crust, water sprays up in a freezing burst. The engine sputters, but holds. Harkins guns it. The Jeep leaps forward, water sloshing over the hood, and bursts onto the far bank, steam hissing from the grill. Martelli laughs, half-crazed with relief. "You're out of your damn mind," maybe Harkins says, patting the dash. But she likes it. That night they reach the outskirts of Bastogne. Shells burst in the distance. The town burns in places, smoke glowing orange against the snow. The 101st Airborne is holding barely. A military policeman waves them through. "Supplies for the 326th medics." "Right here," Harkins replies. The MP nods. "You're late. Tell the weather," that Martelli mutters. They unload by lantern light. Doctors and nurses rush the crates inside, faces gaunt but grateful. One sergeant slaps the Jeep's fender. "Damn thing's a hero." By Christmas Eve, The siege still rages. Airdrops finally resume, but on the ground, the jeeps remain the arteries of the defense. They tow anti-tank guns into firing positions, deliver orders between units, and carry bodies back to the field cemetery. In one corner of the town square, Chaplain Francis Sampson conducts midnight mass on the hood of a jeep, candles flickering against the cold. Soldiers kneel in the snow helmets off rifles at their sides. The jeep's olive hood becomes an altar, its iron frame a symbol of endurance. When the skies clear on December 26th and Patton's Third Army finally breaks through, the first vehicles into Bastogne are fittingly jeeps. Engines roaring, flags flying, they tear through the last snowdrifts and into the ruined town. The men of the 101st cheer wildly. One paratrooper climbs onto Harkins's jeep, waving his helmet in the air. "Told you they'd get through," he shouts. A war correspondent watches the scene and writes later, "The liberation of Bastogne did not arrive on tank treads. It came on 4 small wheels. When the battle ends, Harkins parks old Lizzie by a church wall and finally lets the engine die." The silence feels strange. Martelli pulls out a cigarette with trembling fingers. "Think she's done for?" Harkins smiles. "Not a chance. She's already planning the trip to Germany." Outside, snow begins to fall again, soft, endless, and white. The war is turning. The Allies are moving east once more, and the Jeep, born in American factories and baptized in every climate on Earth, is leading the way. March 24th, 1945. Wesel, Germany. The night sky pulses with orange light. Allied artillery thunder rolls across the Rhine like distant drums. On the riverbank, thousands of vehicles wait, trucks, half-tracks, tanks, all silent engines, idling headlights blacked out. Among them, scattered like ants between elephants, sit hundreds of Willys MB Jeeps. Their drivers smoking quietly, watching the sky. "Hard to believe we made it this far," mutters Sergeant Bill Rader, leaning against the fender of his mud-caked Jeep. His passenger, Lieutenant Frank Carlin, flicks ash into the darkness. "Harder to believe she's still running." Rader chuckles. "She's got more miles than a Greyhound bus." Across the river flares arc into the night. The final push into Germany has begun. Operation Plunder, the crossing of the Rhine. The Jeep crews are ready. When the engineers finish the pontoon bridges, these little machines will be first across, ferrying officers, medics, and ammunition before dawn. The order comes down the line. Rader kicks the clutch, feels the familiar vibration through the wheel, and grins. "Let's go give the Krauts a wake-up call." As dawn breaks, the first Jeeps rattle across the temporary bridge, steel plates clanking under their tires. Smoke drifts low over the river. The air smells of cordite diesel and damp earth. German shells splash water high into the air, but the columns never stop. Halfway across, a round lands nearby, rocking the bridge. A driver up front yells, "Keep it moving, don't stop," and they don't. The Jeeps weave past craters and burning wrecks, engines roaring like an angry swarm. One after another, they climb the far bank, and for the first time, the U.S. Army's wheels touch German soil. In the shattered towns beyond the river, the Jeeps become the spearheads once again. Recon units race ahead of the infantry, darting through narrow streets littered with rubble. They navigate collapsed bridges, flooded ditches, and ambushes with the same stubborn agility that carried them from Normandy to the Ardennes. When the 2nd Armored Division liberates Münster, Jeeps race through the city square, their fenders draped with flags. Civilians stare in awe at the sight, these small, battered cars moving like creatures of will, as if victory itself rides inside them. A German schoolteacher later writes in her diary, "They came not in tanks or thunder, but in little open cars. I thought, this is how the new world arrives." Behind the front, Jeeps swarm like worker bees. Military police direct traffic from their seats. Engineers haul pontoon gear. Field kitchens deliver food. Doctors drive through the smoke to reach the wounded. The entire machine of war, millions of men, and endless cargo moves on the same set of four wheels. An Allied logistics officer notes with dry humor, "If the Jeep stopped tomorrow, the war would too." The deeper they go into Germany, the worse the roads become, cratered, frozen, or simply non-existent. But the Jeeps always find a way. At one ruined bridge near Essen, a Jeep carrying a radio team approaches the edge of a collapsed span. The gap looks impassable. The driver studies it for a moment, then backs up, floors the throttle, and jumps it a 10-foot leap over the riverbank. The Jeep lands with a bone-jarring thud, shocks screaming, but the engine never misses a beat. The radio operator in back laughs hysterically. "We're airborne now, boys." That photo captured by an army cameraman later appears in Stars and Stripes under the headline, "The Jeep Can Fly." As the Wehrmacht collapses, the Jeep becomes a symbol of Allied inevitability, relentless, adaptable, everywhere at once. German propaganda had once called American soldiers mechanical men dependent on technology. Now even their smallest machine seems invincible. Captured German letters describe the frustration they drive those damnable little cars through mud, snow, and shellfire. They never rest. You shoot at one, three more appear. It is as if they grow from the ground. By April, the Allied armies are racing east faster than their maps can keep up. Jeeps carry forward observers who mark coordinates for artillery and airstrikes. Others haul surrendering German officers back to headquarters. One Jeep painted hastily with a white flag drives straight through enemy lines to deliver ceasefire terms to a cut-off garrison near Kassel. When its driver returns alive, grinning and mud-splattered, his commander shakes his head. "You just drove into Germany and back with nothing but a steering wheel and luck." The man shrugs. "That's all a Jeep needs." At night, the headlights glow faintly through the blackout curtains, casting ghostly beams across the broken roads. The sound of thousands of small engines whirring, growling, unstoppable, fills the valleys. It's the mechanical heartbeat of an army closing its fist around the last defenses of the Reich. In the ruins of a farmhouse outside Paderborn, Raider parks under a shattered roof and finally lets the engine idle. Carlin unwraps a chocolate bar from a K-ration pack and splits it in half. "Think she'll make it to Berlin?" he asks. Raider smirks. "She made it through Africa, France, and Bastogne. Berlin's just another pothole." They eat in silence, the Jeep's motor purring softly beside them. Snowflakes drift through the open rafters, melting on the hood. Somewhere far off, they can hear artillery again, steady, relentless. The war's end is near, but the Jeep's journey isn't over. Soon it won't just carry men into battle. It will carry them home. May 8, 1945, Germany. The guns have fallen silent. Smoke still drifts from the cities, but the sound of artillery has been replaced by something new. The steady hum of engines rolling down roads once filled with death. Jeeps, hundreds of them, crawl through the ruins of Europe beneath a pale spring sky. Sergeant Bill Raider drives slowly through the outskirts of Magdeburg, eyes scanning the horizon. The war is over, but his hands won't stop gripping the wheel. The road ahead is lined with twisted iron, burned-out trucks and civilians who stare as the convoy passes tired faces, white flags tied to broomsticks. In the passenger seat, Lieutenant Frank Carlin leans back and exhales. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" Raider nods. "Strange not hearing gunfire." A pause. "Strange that she's still running," Carlin adds with a grin, patting the Jeep's dashboard. They've driven this machine through every kind of hell, sand, mud, snow, ice, and fire. And yet, here it is, engine steady, wheels turning, as if built not of steel, but of willpower itself. All across Europe, Jeeps become the chariots of victory. From France to Austria, from Norway to Czechoslovakia, they rumble through the streets of liberated towns. Children chase after them, waving flags. Soldiers toss candy and cigarettes from the back seats. Some Jeeps carry loudspeakers announcing surrender terms. Others haul medical teams, MPs, or journalists documenting the ruins of a continent. In one famous photograph, a Willys Jeep rolls past the smoking Brandenburg Gate. Its hood bears two words scrawled in chalk: "We're done." But even as peace settles, the work isn't finished. The armies still have to move prisoners, to collect refugees, to feed towns, to rebuild. Trucks bog down in debris. Trains are destroyed. So once again, the Jeep takes up the burden. It becomes an ambulance, a mail van, a command car, and even a makeshift taxi for soldiers heading home. Private Eddie Malone, now attached to a transportation unit, spends his days driving displaced civilians across checkpoints. "I don't speak German, they don't speak English," he writes to his wife. But when they see the Jeep, they smile. I guess that's enough. On one road near Leipzig, a group of German POWs march under guard. A Jeep passes them, its fenders dented, paint scarred. The prisoners watch silently. One of them, a former panzer mechanic, nudges the man beside him and says quietly, "That car won the war." The Jeep's journey doesn't end in Europe. Thousands are shipped across the globe to the Pacific, where the final battles still rage. On the beaches of Okinawa, Jeeps ferry ammunition through shellfire and drag wounded men from the surf. Their silhouettes, tiny against the rising smoke, are the same ones that crossed Africa, Italy, and France. When Japan surrenders in August, photographs show Jeeps lined up on the deck of the battleship USS Missouri, their drivers watching history unfold. One sailor points at them and says, "Guess they finally get a rest." He's wrong. After the war, the Jeep's second life begins. Thousands are sold as surplus for a few $100s apiece. Farmers buy them for plowing fields. Explorers use them for expeditions. Governments everywhere from France to India adopt them as military vehicles. The little American machine becomes a global citizen, just as comfortable in the rice paddies of Burma as on the streets of Berlin. At the Willys Overland plant in Toledo, production shifts to a civilian version, the CJ2A civilian Jeep. Ads show it hauling hay bales, towing wagons, crossing streams. The slogan reads, "The sun never sets on the usefulness of a Jeep." It's not just a car anymore, it's a symbol, a promise that what survived war can build peace. In post-war Europe, Jeeps remain wherever they're needed. They patrol occupation zones, tow Red Cross trailers, and deliver mail to bombed-out cities. Some are traded to farmers, who use them to rebuild the land. Others rust quietly in the weeds, their work finished. One sits abandoned near Bastogne, half buried in snow, its tires flat. The villagers refuse to scrap it. They decorate it with flowers every winter and call it La Petite Liberté, the Little Liberty. Back in the United States, a different kind of parade begins. Jeeps roll down main streets draped in flags and streamers. Veterans ride in the seats where they once fought, waving to crowds. The people cheer not for glamour or glory, but for endurance, for the machine that carried their sons through a world on fire and brought so many home again. A journalist watching one such parade in 1946 writes, "We built tanks to fight and bombers to destroy." But it was the Jeep that endured, the one machine every soldier trusted with his life. Years later, in a museum in Normandy, an old Jeep stands behind a rope barrier. Its olive paint is faded, the windshield cracked. A plaque reads, "Willys MB 1944, donated by the family of Sergeant William Rader, 1st Infantry Division. Driven from Omaha Beach to the Rhine, 1944-45. Engine never replaced." Tourists stop, read, and move on. But veterans linger. Some rest a hand on the hood, eyes misting. For them, the Jeep isn't just a vehicle, it's a memory, a companion, a witness to impossible miles and impossible courage. And when the lights dim at closing time, the Jeep sits in silence. The faint smell of oil and old leather still lingers. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the echo of its engine, the hum of its tires rolling across mud, sand, and snow. The sound of a world being carried toward freedom 1 mile, one miracle, one Jeep at a time.